Navy Captain Charles Fasnacht is an amazing veteran whose story deserves to be told. He was born in 1957 and grew up with his two younger siblings, Tamala and Steve. Steve enlisted in the Air Force before Fasnacht joined the Navy and was his first salute. Since his years in high school, he knew that he wanted to serve his country in the military. He went to college and eventually enlisted in the Navy. When Fasnacht was in 11th grade, he decided to go through the ROTC program and started to get scholarships. He received a full scholarship to Penn State University and got the same commissioning to be an officer that he would have gotten from the Naval Academy. Fasnacht didn't enjoy how he was being handled as a midshipman and wanted to give up because he no longer saw the value in it. His father was the one that convinced him to continue.
My dad said, "Why don't you give it a try a little bit longer? Why don't you why don't you see what it's like going out to sea?" And so I had the opportunity. I talked to one of my professors of the Navy and Navy professors, and said that I wanted to check it out and go to sea. And so I was able to do that. And once I went out to sea, then I was hooked.
During his classes over the summer, he would go away for 6 to 8 weeks. His first year, he got to go on a surface warship and work to enlist people and do manual work. He also got to train with combat systems. He learned how to use a radar scope and track ships. His next year, he got to go with the Marines and then the Naval Aviation Group. During that time, he was in jets where they were doing dogfights. After that, he was back on ships doing officer activities. His first job coming out of college was a damage control assistant. He learned his firefighting training in Newport, Rhode Island. During this time, Fasnacht was responsible for teaching people how to fight fires on ships. The ship he was on at this time was the USS Trip, FF 1075. He was also responsible for the electricity on ships. Fasnacht was the electrical officer and had all of the electricians working for him. Also, since there was no such thing as a GPS when Fasnacht served, he had to learn how to navigate with the stars. He learned how to do what's called shooting the stars from the people that enlisted with that as their specialty. He then had to plan the routes that ships would follow. The major qualification that Fasnacht has is called Surface Warfare Officer. After he received that qualification, he got a special gold bar that he wore on his chest. He says, "It's similar to what a pilot gets when they get their wings on their chest." Fasnacht says the hardest part of his training was studying. In his words,
The hardest part was studying because I really never learned how to study very well. And when I went through the training for to be an officer, um, I had to learn how to study differently.
in the Navy, promotions are given depending on how long a person serves and certain requirements. Fasnacht was promoted from ensign to lieutenant JG to lieutenant commander to commander, and finally to Navy captain. After adding up all the years needed to achieve those promotions, he ended up serving for 25 years. Only about 40% of commanders get promoted to Navy captain, so Fasnacht is very proud of making it that far. He could have been an admiral with receiving commanding officer about 6 or 8 times, but decided to leave the Navy. Fasnacht didn't want to be away from his family for any longer, especially with a father at home who was sick with cancer. The hardest part of military life for Fasnacht was being away from the people he loved. He said it was very hard being away from his wife. The only way to communicate with her was through letters, which took a long time to send and receive. He eventually decided to leave active duty and just be in the reserves. There, he got to do all of the things he enjoyed from the Navy while still being able to go home and see his loved ones. While going back to work on the ventilation of the USS Forrestal, he discovered remnants of a terrible fire on the ship during the Vietnam War. The footage from this fire was part of his past firefighting training.
I went back to overhaul and worked on the USS Forrestal in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And the Forrestal, interestingly, um, is famous for when we used to do our firefighting training. They would use videos from a fire that happened on the USS Forrestal in Vietnam, um, and it was a horrible fire. In fact, like I said, it was used for firefighting training. But I was on the Forrestal in 83, I think it was 84, 83, 84 timeframe in Philadelphia. And I was working there and on the ventilation, repairing the ventilation systems.
Fasnacht then was on the USS Capodanno, which he was the commanding officer of. He was the youngest commanding officer of a frigate at that time in the reserves. After his time in the reserves, he worked at the Naval War College. There he did training and gave people scenarios and asked them what they would do in that scenario. He then collected the responses and critiqued them. In conclusion, Navy Captain Charles Fasnacht is an amazing veteran whose story should be told. Fasnacht really enjoyed his time in the service along with serving his country. He learned many life lessons that he is very thankful for. Thank you, Charles Fasnacht, for your service.